Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Today we're going to be talking to the individual in charge of making sure that your ballot gets cast securely on Election Day. And then, believe it or not, we're going to be talking about holiday shopping. We're going to do all that right after these messages.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host.
Welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Today we're very pleased to have the Secretary of the Commonwealth, Schmidt. Al's going to talk a little bit about what's going on with election security. So, Secretary, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
So, Secretary of the Commonwealth is also, I guess, kind of the Secretary of the State. You're in charge of overseeing all of the election security issues and the administration of those things. Is that correct?
That's right. The Pennsylvania Department of State does a number of things. Certainly the most high profile among them is overseeing elections in Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania Department of State also, all corporations and charities functioning in Pennsylvania have to register with us. We license 34 different professions. So if you want to be a nurse, if you want to be a real estate agent, if you want to be a car dealer or anything else like that, regulated by Department of State. And the only other main thing that we do is regulate boxing and mixed martial arts and all sorts of other random responsibilities that fit under that umbrella.
And the big one now is, with the election looming, is, of course, elections. So, look, a lot of discussion about election security, a lot of court decisions. We're going to touch on some of those in our conversations here today. Just generally, why should Pennsylvanians feel confident in this election and in election security?
On the front end, when you register to vote, there are validations built into the system. So when you apply to register, you're providing a Social Security number or a driver's license number or an identifier unique to you. So when that is processed, we can confirm that you are who you say you are. When you show up to vote for the first time, you have to show ID in Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, since primary 2020, every vote that's cast, there is a voter-verified paper ballot record of every vote, as in a ballot that is counted and tabulated for the results, and then is used in 2 audits after every election. So whether you vote by mail or you vote in person at your polling place using either a hand-marked paper ballot or making your selections on a ballot marking device that'll print your selections that you verify, ink on paper, before that vote is cast. It's one reason why you can say with confidence that elections in Pennsylvania have never been more safe and secure.
There's a lot of allegations about, I'll call it, non-citizens voting. How do you guys, is this particular system you've just described, does that prevent that from happening, or are there additional protections in place that make sure that doesn't happen?
Yes, and I worked on that issue for years. When I was in Philadelphia for 10 years, I was an elected Republican city commissioner or election commissioner of Philadelphia. I worked on, and I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, right? And growing up, hearing the things that people hear about Philadelphia, getting elected there, responsible for elections, researched for years into allegations of whether it was deceased people voting for dead people, or people voting more than once, or non-citizens and all the rest, to get a handle on to the extent to which it occurs at all. And with non-citizens, we found that it occurred very, very rarely, and had occurred through a system that was in place some years ago.
Not the current system.
Not the current system. So I approached the Pennsylvania Department of State in 2016 and 2017, saying that there were a small number of non-citizens who were registering to vote when they went to PennDOT to get a driver's license in Pennsylvania. Department of State did the responsible thing at the time, and they changed that whole format. So if you are a non-citizen getting a driver's license in Pennsylvania, you never encounter the screen asking you if you'd want to register to vote.
Okay, so before we go to the first break, let's talk a little bit about kind of the potential delay. In 2020, we had this delay, which in fact was, I think you'd probably agree, was largely anticipated. You were in Philadelphia at the time overseeing that. But we knew that Democrats were voting more in mail-ins versus Republicans. So this swing was not a surprise on election night, correct?
That's right. And mail-in voting was pretty new, right? The first time we had it on a big scale was primary 2020. Prior to that, we had just had absentee ballot voting. So very similar, just with fewer people participating. And I think at Philadelphia, the most we had ever had was probably 30,000 of those in 2020 general, we had 375,000 mail ballots to count. And it's not so much a delay, it's only a perception of a delay.
Right.
But in Pennsylvania, our counties can't begin counting ballots until 7 a.m. on election morning. Unlike plenty of other states, Republican states, Democratic states can begin that process earlier. But a couple big things have changed. Counties have acquired a lot more equipment that they didn't have in 2020 to help with the process. They have a lot more experience than they had in 2020 when it was new to all of us. And fewer voters are voting by mail than were in 2020 after that sort of peak COVID environment.
Great. We're going to continue with the election issues when we come back. We'll be back right back after these messages.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. We're here with Secretary Al Schmidt, Secretary of the Commonwealth. So, Secretary, one of the things that has come about has been these allegations of foreign actors in our elections, whether they be Russia or China or Iran or North Korea, et cetera, et cetera. We seen any evidence of that in Pennsylvania at this point?
We just did the other day, unfortunately. Department of Homeland Security, their agencies, FBI, identified a video that was purporting to be an election worker in Bucks County tearing up ballots for one of the candidates. If you've ever been involved with election administration, you could tell it was fake, but most people, aren't involved with running elections day in and day out. And our federal partners identified that as having its origin in Russia and spread by Russian actors.
If you think about it, it certainly makes sense, regardless of which side they're going to come down on, to create discord within not only the Commonwealth, but within the United States. And there was a U.S. intelligence report that said I believe it was Russian influences are actually looking actively after the election to try and create unrest as well. Any further evidence other than what you've described, and I'm sure you have a plan for that too.
And the real point is to undermine confidence in our election results, whether it's for or against one candidate or the other. Don't know, but the whole point is to undermine confidence and to keep Americans from having confidence in our system of government and the way in which we elect people in our representative democracy.
Yeah, two issues or incidents that just happened that some of our viewers probably took a look at. There was an issue in Lancaster County where some number of applications, not ballots, some number of applications to vote were caught by election officials. Can you talk about that and who we think that is and how, the protections in place that make sure that doesn't happen?
And those were, as you rightly pointed out, Gene, voter registration applications. So they weren't ballots. And when someone applies to register to vote, there's a whole process that counties go through to make sure that the identity of that person is confirmed, whether it's social security number or driver's license number or whatever else. Lancaster County reached out to us right away. We were in touch with them from the beginning. They seem to be handling this responsibly and in taking a closer look at those applications. But they're really doing what any county would do when they receive a single application that appears to be not legitimate. They would examine it further and possibly refer it to law enforcement. So we're looking forward to hearing the extent to which it happened. They mentioned 2,500. That was the total number of applications submitted, not the total number of ballots that they identified to be not legitimate.
Then there's another situation, which is with more and more of the drop boxes for mail-in. I believe it was Portland, Oregon, where someone set fire to some number of them. You've not seen any of that in Pennsylvania, but what would the plan be in case something like that happened? And I know you've got protections in place to make sure that doesn't happen here too.
We do, and we haven't seen that in Pennsylvania, and I don't think we've seen that anywhere in the country other than those two incidences the other day in the western part of the country. In Pennsylvania, drop boxes have 24-hour camera surveillance on them with footage that's retained in the event there is an incident. In many counties, those drop boxes, which are Board of Elections drop boxes, again, they're Board of Elections drop boxes, so the voter can return their ballot directly to the Board of Elections. They're also frequently staffed by Board of Elections staff for when the voter is coming up and returning it. If there were an incident, we'd identify the extent to which it impacted ballots being cast, and then reach out to voters to let them know.
Great. We've got about 30 seconds left. Could you just talk quickly about what the atmosphere is relative to local election officials? These are folks who are trying to run these local elections. They're literally our neighbors or the person down the street who you know. What's the atmosphere out there right now?
They really are, and unfortunately the atmosphere has become a lot more contentious than when I first got involved in running elections in 2012. The Shapiro administration organized something called the Election Threat Task Force. So if there is any of that ugliness that returns with threats of violence or intimidation targeting our poll workers or our polling places, or our county election officials, everyone knows what everyone else's responsibilities are on the federal, state, and local level to make sure that people are safe and feel safe as they should be.
Secretary, thanks for being with us today. We appreciate that. Hopefully you'll come back sometime soon. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about, believe it or not, holiday shopping.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by CrossState Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Well, I know we've just had Halloween, but we're going to be on talking here today about holiday Christmas shopping, although I think the stores have been decorated since July 4th. I'm not sure about that, but I think they probably have. With us today, we have Christina Mihalik. Christina is the Senior Vice President, Government Relations for CrossState Credit Union Association, and Nicola, Foggie, the Chief Regulatory Officer for CrossState. So thanks to both of you for coming on here today.
Thanks for having us.
Let's talk a little bit. I know there's been a lot of discussion about consumer debt, and from what I understand, that debt, because of the dollars that were out there during COVID and the dollars that flowed, it was down. Is it coming back up? Are you seeing that consumer debt coming back up again?
Well, to share some stats with you, the average holiday debt is continuing to slow down to a downward trend, but more people are taking a little bit longer to pay off that holiday debt. But some of the data shows that 34% of Americans took on holiday debt last season. As a matter of fact, compared to 2022, 35% and 36% in 2021, the 34% is a little bit lower. And it seems like folks are taking on an average of about $1,028 in debt over the holiday season. Doesn't seem like much, but if you have, a certain income, that may be a lot to you.
But just to add also, it's good to note, even though we are accruing this debt, it is decreasing from 2022, which is a good sign.
Yes.
But we also need to be mindful of people that are still paying off their debt from last year as well. We have about 10% that are still kind of guiding that line of allocating their funds to previous debt on top of what's accruing this year, let's say, for the holidays.
Are you seeing rates start to come down with the changes at the Fed? Is that any evidence of that yet? I guess that's a little slow.
Yeah, well, the credit, there was a rate reduction. Credit card rates came down a little bit. And so that does help a little bit in this year of the holiday season, where folks may be spending, on the things that they want to get their kids. They want to make their kids happy, and so one of the things that we do see besides credit cards is something called buy now, pay later. So
Explain what that is.
Yes, yeah. Well, so certainly buy now, pay later. If maybe I'm dating myself, but do you remember way back Kmart?
Yeah.
You can go there and you could pick out all your kids' Christmas gifts, and you put it away.
We used to call that layaway.
Right, and layaway. That's exactly
I'm dating
right.
myself now.
There you go, Gene. That's exactly what it is. And so, after cooling down a little bit last year, it seems BNPLs, as we call it, has increased by 24%. It's something that helps people to manage what they're paying off over a period of time.
And what's interesting is you're noticing parents with young children using BNPL, but also there's an increasing number of Gen Zs and millennials depending on BNPL. So I think at the end of the day, what's really important is really the key to holidays is from a financial standpoint is to save and plan early. With savings, it helps you manage your finance better. You won't have to depend on credit cards, which often come with a higher interest rate, which could lead to long-term debt. And it really helps you plan and stick to a budget, and kind of keeps you more mindful of maybe I shouldn't purchase this and stick along the lines of maybe that's not the best purchase at the time. So really to avoid those impulse purchases.
I'm going to date myself again and come up with another topic that I recall from when I was younger, which was basically Christmas clubs. You would start and you put X number of dollars in starting in January. And you still have those.
We still have
We
those.
Credit
do.
union still has those. All right, how much are they used?
Yeah.
Quite frequently.
Yes. Matter of fact, many financial institutions, such as credit unions, still have them in place. So a holiday club account or a Christmas club account is something that you can utilize to kind of prepare yourself for the holiday season and spending. You can start it in advance, and there are some club accounts that actually earn a little bit of interest, so you might even benefit from doing it that way. But usually it's a separate account from your savings, and then you put money in it periodically, or you can have a payroll deduction from your payroll to put money in there in advance, and you can usually start it as early as a few months before the holiday season.
When we come back, we're going to break for these messages. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about how you keep yourself financially stable during the holidays.
Great.
Back in a minute.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania American Water. We keep life flowing across the Keystone State.
Welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. We're here with Christina Mihalik and Nicola Foggie of CrossState Credit Union Association, talking a little bit about what you need to think about going into the Christmas season. One of the words that people don't like to hear, and is a tough one to adhere to, is the old budget word. So talk about what you'd recommend to people in terms of the budget.
We kind of go back to the golden rule of the 50-30-20 rule for your budget. So really the budget model splits your monthly income into three main categories. So you have 50% goes to the necessities that you need, like housing, food, transportation. 30% would go into extras, necessarily more essential to living and working, but are important, like monthly subscriptions, entertainment, meals out, and travel. And then the most important part is the 20%, which is the savings dedicated to start building a financial cushion for yourself. On top of that, it's really important to make a list of what you need to buy or spend money on during, especially the holiday season, and kind of reevaluate where you might need to cut back if needed and what you can safely eliminate.
And if I can add to that, if you can, review your last year's spending. The beauty of online statements, which most people have now, you can go back, and even some of those credit cards that you might have utilized last holiday season, they typically itemize for you at the end of the year on an end-of-year statement. So you're going to want to ask yourself a couple questions. Were you happy with your spending? Are there spending categories that no longer serve you? Has anything changed in your budget between this year and last year? Have there been some additional kids added to the family, or did you have...
That would add on.
Yeah, exactly, right. Or was there an impact to your job, your income?
And the one thing that I think that you guys mentioned earlier was gifts aren't the only thing to worry about during the holidays. If you're going to go and you're going to go visit, get on a plane, visit the kids somewhere, visit grandkids, you have to plan in some of those as well as some other expenses. So.
And yes, they do add up. I mean, simple as travel costs, holiday meals, gift exchanges. I mean, even with what we do in our office with gift exchanges, I have to, be mindful of that as well. Yes. Even host gifts. And even, when it comes around the holiday time, tipping,
yes.
If you have somebody like your barber, your hairdresser, kind of keep that in mind as well as just, service-oriented tips.
Do you have a recommendation on numbers to do for those folks? Because that's something I think is interesting when you look at it.
Well, actually, what we would recommend is that you plan. You be mindful of your spending, but make a list. So literally make a list of those activities that you want to do around the holidays, including the list of people you want to give gifts to. And, assign some numbers, back to that budget, assign some numbers ahead of time, some dollars to those activities or to your list for those people you want to give gifts to, so that you have a number in mind that you're ceiling for your spending.
All right. And there's some other things I know that you guys had mentioned as well about some traps people can fall into during the holidays. Yeah. What are some of those?
So free shipping. So sometimes shipping is not free. A lot of times many retailers need you to reach a certain dollar amount in your purchases in your cart before they assign that free shipping to your total purchase. So some of the tips might be to start early with your purchases. You can save in your cart in most retailers online stores until you do reach that dollar amount that will grant you free shipping, and then you pull the trigger on ordering.
So just because you might buy something for $40 and somebody says it's free shipping for $60 and above, well, I'll just buy something else for $20.
Right.
But the shipping might have only been $5 or $10.
Exactly.
Right?
And that extra thing might not have been on your list.
It might have been something you didn't really need or plan for. And then you have to figure that out too.
Exactly.
Okay. Any other traps that people have to be cautious about?
Yeah, there's 2 others, and I do have to say I've fallen for that quite often with the shipping, where it's like I have $40, but if I spend 60 more, I get free shipping. So just to be aware of that. But also, I think it's important to be cautious of upsells. Know what you're paying for and what you're getting when you make a purchase. Sometimes retailers might add extras for things that you don't need, if it's subscription costs, extended warranties, concierge services. So like if you do see any of these extras added to the price of the item, just ask the retailer to remove them before you finalize the purchase. Okay. And then another area as well is really doing the math on holiday deals. So most of the time around the holidays, some retailers, make their deals seem greater than they really are. Marking up suggested price to $600, makes you think you're really getting a better deal than what you actually are. So really make your list and stick to it, because sometimes you'll see inflation, the discount to make a deal seem more appealing.
About the cashback options on credit cards, do you push people towards that? Do they work well?
Yes.
Yeah, so using a credit card can actually be a smart way to get the most out of your holiday shopping. Many people have rewards cards with their card providers, and so if you're a smart shopper, you may be earning rewards and points that you can use later down the road or for further shopping during the holiday season. So it's a good idea.
Great.
And some reward savviness. Quickly. I think it's important to look for rewards that provide rewards for every purchase. They don't expire, and there's no limits on how many purchases you make.
Thanks to both of you for being on. Thanks for your advice. Thanks for coming on the show today. Appreciate you watching. Thanks very much. See you next week.
Thank you.